I never thought a simple email notification would change everything. The chime of my phone at 3:47 a.m. in a cramped hotel room in Frankfurt should have been insignificant, just another message lost in the digital noise of modern business. But as I squinted at the screen through jet-lagged eyes, the subject line cut through my drowsiness like a blade. Termination notice. My name is David Chen, and I had built something extraordinary from nothing. What started as a small tech consulting firm in downtown Seattle had grown into a multi-million-dollar enterprise specializing in AI-driven logistics solutions. 7 years of 16-hour days, of missing family dinners, of pouring every ounce of my being into creating something that mattered. And now, apparently, it was over. The email was clinically cold, devoid of any human warmth or acknowledgement of what we had built together. David, effective immediately. Your services are no longer required. Please arrange for the return of all company materials. Your final compensation will be processed according to standard procedures. Marcus Harrison, CEO. Marcus Harrison, the man I had trusted with my company's future, the brilliant strategist I had brought in as chief operating officer 3 years ago, when the business had grown beyond my ability to manage alone. A Harvard MBA with an impressive track record at Fortune 500 companies, Marcus had seemed like the perfect partner to help scale our operations. I had been so focused on the technical side of our business that I had gladly handed over the day-to-day management to someone I believed shared my vision. I read the email 3 times, each pass making the reality more surreal. No phone call, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the partnership we had built. Just a sterile corporate dismissal, sent across an ocean while I was negotiating a crucial contract with a German automotive manufacturer that could have doubled our revenue. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was in Frankfurt closing a deal that would secure our company's future, only to discover that my future with the company had apparently already been decided without my input. The contract discussions had gone better than expected. BMW's logistics division was impressed with our predictive analytics platform, and we were on the verge of signing a 3-year agreement worth $8 million. But Marcus had forgotten something crucial, something that would make his cold email the most expensive mistake of his career. When I had incorporated Chen Logistics Solutions 7 years ago, I had retained 92% ownership. Marcus owned 6%, granted to him when he joined as my business partner. The remaining 2% was distributed among key employees as part of our profit-sharing program. I owned the company. Not just a stake in it, not just a controlling interest, but an overwhelming majority that made me the undisputed decision-maker in any major corporate action. And terminating a co-founder and majority shareholder without proper board approval was not just unethical, it was potentially illegal. The hotel room suddenly felt suffocating. I stood up, my legs unsteady from the combination of travel fatigue and adrenaline, and walked to the window. Frankfurt's skyline glittered in the pre-dawn darkness, but I wasn't seeing the city. I was seeing the faces of our 23 employees, people who had believed in our vision and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. Sarah Mitchell, our lead data scientist, who had left a comfortable position at Amazon to join our team. James Rodriguez, our operations manager, who had been with us since we were working out of a converted warehouse. Lisa Park, our client relations specialist, who had an uncanny ability to turn frustrated customers into loyal advocates. What did they think when they arrived at work and found out their co-founder had been terminated by email? Did Marcus tell them I had been fired for cause? Did he paint me as a liability, someone who needed to be removed for the good of the company? The questions multiplied in my mind, each one stoking the fire of anger that was building in my chest. But beneath the anger was something deeper and more painful. betrayal. Marcus and I had worked late into countless nights, strategizing about the company's future, celebrating our successes, and supporting each other through the inevitable challenges of building a business. I had trusted him with my life's work, and he had repaid that trust with a corporate coup executed while I was thousands of miles away. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Marcus's number. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment before I changed my mind. No, a phone call would give him time to prepare, to craft explanations and justifications. He had chosen to handle this matter through impersonal electronic communication, and I would respond in kind, but not with words. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching flights. The earliest direct flight to Seattle departed at 11:30 a.m. I could be home by evening, Seattle time. I booked a first-class seat, charged it to my personal credit card, and began packing my suitcase with the methodical precision of someone who had made a decision that would change everything. The flight felt endless, 13 hours of forced stillness, while my mind raced through scenarios and possibilities. I reviewed the company's articles of incorporation, the shareholder agreements, and the operating procedures that governed major corporate decisions. Everything I read confirmed what I already knew. Marcus had overstepped his authority in a spectacular fashion. But beyond the legal technicalities, I was grappling with a deeper question. What kind of man fires his business partner by email? What kind of leader makes such a momentous decision without a conversation, without an explanation, without even the courtesy of a phone call? The answer, I realized, was the kind of man who had been planning this move for some time. You don't wake up one morning and decide to fire your business partner on a whim. This had been calculated, deliberate, and timed to coincide with my absence from the country. Marcus had probably been waiting for the perfect opportunity, and my trip to Frankfurt had provided it. As the plane descended through the clouds towards Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, I could see the city spread out below me like a circuit board, all gleaming lights and geometric patterns. Somewhere down there was the office building where I had first outlined my vision for an AI-driven logistics platform on a whiteboard, where I had hired my first employee, where I had celebrated our first $1 million contract. And somewhere down there, Marcus Harrison was probably sleeping peacefully, believing he had successfully executed a corporate takeover. I landed at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time and took a taxi directly to my downtown apartment. The familiar sights of the city should have been comforting, but instead they felt strange, as if I was seeing them through different eyes. The Space Needle looked smaller somehow, the waterfront less impressive. Everything looked the same, but I had changed during those 13 hours in the air. My apartment was exactly as I had left it 3 days ago, but it felt like a museum of my former life. The awards on the mantel, the photographs of company events, the stack of business magazines with our company featured on the covers. All of it belonged to a version of myself that no longer existed. I had been David Chen, co-founder and majority owner of Chen Logistics Solutions. Now I was David Chen, terminated employee, fired by email while on a business trip. Except that wasn't quite right, was it? I spent the evening researching corporate law, reading articles about shareholder rights, and reviewing the documentation that established my ownership of the company. The more I read, the more confident I became that Marcus had made a critical error. In his eagerness to remove me from the equation, he had forgotten the most basic principle of corporate governance. The shareholders elect the board, and the board hires and fires the executives. I owned 92% of the shares. I was the board, for all practical purposes. Marcus had just fired his own boss. The next morning I dressed with unusual care, selecting a navy blue suit that projected authority and confidence. I had a plan, but it required perfect execution and impeccable timing. I arrived at the office building at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before our scheduled monthly board meeting. Marcus had sent out the agenda 3 days ago, before my trip to Frankfurt. The meeting was supposed to focus on third-quarter performance and strategic planning for the following year. Instead, it would be about something else entirely. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Chen Logistics Solutions occupied the entire level. The familiar hum of productivity greeted me as I stepped into the reception area. Computers humming, phones ringing, the gentle buzz of focused work. It was the sound of success, the sound of a company that was thriving despite the drama playing out in the executive suite. Several employees looked up as I walked through the main workspace, their expressions a mixture of surprise and confusion. Word had obviously spread about my termination, and they weren't sure how to react to my presence. I smiled and nodded, maintaining the composure of someone who belonged there, someone who had every right to be there. The boardroom was located at the far end of the floor, a glass-walled conference room that had been designed to project transparency and openness. Through the walls, I could see that the meeting had already begun. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by Sarah Mitchell and James Rodriguez, who served as employee representatives on our informal board structure. I paused outside the door, taking a deep breath and centering myself for what was about to happen. Then I turned the handle and stepped inside. The conversation stopped immediately. Marcus looked up from his presentation materials, his face cycling through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, and then something that might have been fear. Sarah and James both stood up, their relief at seeing me evident in their postures and expressions. "David," Sarah said, her voice carrying a note of genuine warmth. "We weren't sure when you'd be back from Germany. I caught an earlier flight," I replied, keeping my tone neutral and professional. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Marcus had found his voice. "David, I think there might be some confusion here. As I explained in my email, your employment with the company has been terminated. I'm not sure why you're here." I walked to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Marcus and sat down, taking my time to arrange my materials before responding. "Actually, Marcus, I think you're the one who might be confused. I'm here for the board meeting. As the majority shareholder, I believe I have the right to attend." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Marcus's mind working, trying to process what I had just said and its implications. Sarah and James exchanged glances, clearly sensing that something significant was about to happen. "Now," I continued, opening my folder and removing a set of documents, "I'd like to propose a vote on a matter of some urgency. It concerns the leadership of this company and whether we have confidence in our current management structure." Marcus's face had gone pale. "David, I don't think this is the appropriate venue for—" "Actually," I interrupted, "this is exactly the appropriate venue. Sarah, James, I'd like you to review these documents." I slid copies of the company's articles of incorporation and shareholder agreements across the table. As you can see, I own 92% of Chen Logistics Solutions. Marcus owns 6%. The remaining 2% is distributed among key employees. Sarah picked up the documents, her eyes scanning the pages with the analytical precision that had made her such a valuable member of our team. James leaned over to read along with her, his expression growing more serious as he absorbed the information. "What this means," I continued, "is that any major corporate decision, including the termination of key personnel, requires approval from the shareholders. Marcus, did you seek such approval before sending me that email?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. "Furthermore," I said, removing another document from my folder, "our operating agreement specifically states that decisions affecting the employment of shareholders must be made by a majority vote of the board during a properly convened meeting, not by email, Not by unilateral decision, but by formal vote. I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. So, I'd like to propose the following motion. That this board has lost confidence in Marcus Harrison's ability to lead this company effectively, and that his position as Chief Executive Officer should be terminated immediately. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning system. Marcus stared at me across the table, his carefully constructed corporate composure finally cracking. Sarah and James looked between us, clearly understanding that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Before we vote, I continued, I'd like to present the facts that led to this motion. 3 days ago, while I was in Frankfurt negotiating a contract that will bring $8 million in revenue to this company, Marcus sent me an email terminating my employment. No phone call, no explanation, no discussion. Just a cold corporate dismissal of the person who built this company from nothing. I began pacing around the table, my anger finally finding its voice. This is not how partners treat each other. This is not how leaders behave. This is not how you build a company culture based on trust and mutual respect. Marcus chose to handle this matter in the most cowardly way possible, firing me while I was thousands of miles away and unable to respond. Sarah cleared her throat. David, can you help us understand what led to this situation? We heard that you had been terminated, but we didn't get any explanation about the reasons. I looked at Marcus, giving him an opportunity to explain himself. He remained silent, his hands folded in front of him, his eyes fixed on the table. That's an excellent question, Sarah. Marcus, would you care to enlighten us about your reasoning? Marcus finally looked up, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. David, you know as well as I do that this company has outgrown your ability to manage it effectively. Your technical skills are impressive, but you lack the strategic vision and operational expertise needed to scale a business of this size. I see, I replied. And this realization came to you suddenly, while I was in Germany closing our largest contract to date. The timing was coincidental, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Coincidental, I repeated. Just like it was coincidental that you chose to handle this matter by email rather than having a conversation. Just like it was coincidental that you didn't consult with the board before making this decision. I returned to my seat and leaned forward, my voice taking on a harder edge. Marcus, I brought you into this company because I believed you shared my vision for what we could build together. I trusted you with my life's work, and you repaid that trust by attempting a corporate coup while I was out of the country. That's not what this was, Marcus protested. But his words sounded hollow even to himself. Then what was it? I asked. Help me understand how firing your business partner by email while he's closing a major deal represents good leadership. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He looked around the table, perhaps hoping for support from Sarah or James, but found only neutral expressions waiting for his answer. I was acting in the best interests of the company, he finally said. Whose best interests? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were acting in your own best interest. You saw an opportunity to remove me from the equation and take control of the company I built. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's face reddened, and I could see him struggling to find words that would justify his actions. I want to share something with you, I continued, removing my phone from my pocket. Yesterday, after receiving your email, I had a conversation with our attorneys. They informed me that your actions may constitute breach of fiduciary duty, potentially exposing you to personal liability for damages to the company. This was a bluff, but it was based on solid legal reasoning. As a minority shareholder and executive, Marcus did have fiduciary duties to the company and its shareholders. Attempting to remove the majority owner without proper authorization could indeed be seen as a breach of those duties. The bluff worked. Marcus's composure finally cracked completely, and I saw something in his eyes that looked like panic. "David," he said, his voice taking on a pleading tone, "I think we can work this out. Maybe we were both hasty in our actions. Perhaps we can find a way to move forward that works for everyone." "I'm sure we can," I replied. "But first, I'd like to call for the vote I proposed earlier. All in favor of terminating Marcus Harrison's employment as Chief Executive Officer of Chen Logistics Solutions." I raised my hand. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then raised hers as well. James followed suit. "All opposed?" Marcus sat frozen in his chair, his hand remaining on the table. "The motion carries unanimously," I announced. "Marcus, your employment with Chen Logistics Solutions is terminated, effective immediately. Please arrange for the return of all company materials. Your final compensation will be processed according to standard procedures." The irony of using his own words against him was not lost on anyone in the room. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, his face cycling through a range of emotions. Anger, disbelief, fear, and finally, something that looked like defeat. He stood up slowly, gathering his materials with shaking hands. "This isn't over, David. I'll be speaking with my attorneys about this." "That's certainly your right," I replied calmly. "But I'd suggest you review the shareholder agreement carefully before you make any legal threats. You'll find that everything we've done here today is completely within the bounds of corporate law." Marcus walked toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. When he turned back, I saw something that shocked me, tears streaming down his face. "David," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing." And then he was gone, leaving the three of us in a silence that felt both heavy and hopeful. Sarah was the first to speak. "David, what happens now?" I looked around the boardroom, at the company I had built and nearly lost, at the people who had chosen to stand with me in the crucial moment. "Now," I said, "we get back to work. We have a company to run, and we have a lot of people counting on us to do it well." Over the following days, I worked to repair the damage that Marcus's attempted coup had caused. I met with each employee individually, explaining what had happened, and reassuring them about the company's stability and future. I called our major clients to confirm that our operations would continue without interruption. I reached out to our partners and vendors to maintain the relationships that were crucial to our success. Most importantly, I reflected on the lessons I had learned from this experience. I had been so focused on the technical aspects of building a great company that I had neglected the human aspects. I had trusted Marcus completely, without establishing proper checks and balances. I had been naive about the potential for betrayal, even among people I considered friends. But I had also learned something else. That building a company is not just about creating products and services, it's about creating a culture and a community. The fact that Sarah and James had supported me in the crucial moment wasn't just about corporate governance. It was about their belief in the vision we had built together. 3 weeks later, I was back in my office, reviewing the signed contract from BMW that would indeed double our revenue over the next 3 years. The deal that I had been negotiating when Marcus sent his fateful email had been completed successfully, and we were already planning for the expansion it would require. I had hired a new chief operating officer, this time with much more careful attention to establishing clear roles, responsibilities, and accountability structures. I had also implemented a more formal board structure, with independent directors who could provide oversight and guidance. The company was stronger than it had ever been, not just financially, but culturally. The employees had rallied around our shared vision, and there was a sense of purpose and determination that I had never seen before. We had survived a crisis that could have destroyed us, and we had emerged more united and focused than ever. Late one evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I found myself standing in the boardroom where it had all happened. The room looked the same as it always had, but it felt different now. It was no longer just a place where we held meetings and made decisions. It was the place where I had stood up for my life's work, where I had fought for the company I had built, where I had learned that sometimes the greatest victories come from the most unexpected challenges. I thought about Marcus, wondering what he was doing now, whether he had found another position, whether he had learned anything from the experience. I felt no anger toward him anymore, just a kind of sad bewilderment at how badly he had misjudged the situation. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful for the company I had built. Grateful for the people who had stood with me. Grateful for the opportunity to prove that trust and integrity still mattered in the business world. The email that was supposed to end my career had instead become the catalyst for making it stronger than ever. As I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me, I smiled at the irony of it all. Marcus had tried to fire me with a cold, impersonal email sent from thousands of miles away. In the end, he had fired himself, and he had done it with tears streaming down his face in front of the people he had tried to turn against me. Sometimes justice comes in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes the very actions that are meant to destroy us end up being the ones that save us. And sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the greatest triumphs. I walked out into the Seattle night, breathing in the cool air and feeling more alive than I had in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities for growth and success. But tonight I was simply grateful to be exactly where I belonged, at the helm of the company I had built, surrounded by people who believed in our shared vision, ready to face whatever the future might bring. The termination email that had shocked me awake in a Frankfurt hotel room had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to my career. It had forced me to confront the reality of what I had built, to fight for what I believed in, and to prove that sometimes the most powerful weapon in business is simply the truth. I had learned that ownership isn't just about percentages and legal documents. It's about vision, leadership, and the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds seem impossible. It's about building something that matters, not just to you, but to the people whose lives and livelihoods depend on your success. As I walked toward my car, I pulled out my phone and looked at the email that had started it all. Termination notice. I laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty parking garage. Marcus had been right about one thing. Something had definitely been terminated that day. But it wasn't my employment, it wasn't my career, and it certainly wasn't my company. What had been terminated was my naivety, my willingness to trust without verification, my assumption that everyone shared my commitment to building something great together. In their place, I had gained wisdom, strength, and an unshakable confidence in my ability to lead the company I had created. The drive home through the quiet streets of Seattle gave me time to think about the future. We had new contracts to fulfill, new technologies to develop, new markets to explore. We had a team of talented, dedicated people who were ready to take on any challenge. We had the resources, the vision, and the determination to become one of the most successful logistics companies in the world. But more than that, we had something that couldn't be quantified in spreadsheets or measured in quarterly reports. We had integrity. We had proven that doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, even when it's costly, even when it requires courage, is not just morally correct. It's also good business. As I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car for a moment, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city's glow, I realized that the story wasn't really about corporate intrigue or shareholder rights or even personal betrayal. It was about something much more fundamental: the power of truth, the importance of principles, and the remarkable things that can happen when you refuse to let others define your worth or determine your future. I had been fired by email, but I had fired back with something much more powerful: the truth. And in the end, that had made all the difference. The next chapter of Chen Logistics Solutions was about to begin, and I couldn't wait to see what we would build together. The company that had almost been destroyed by betrayal had been reborn through courage, and the future had never looked brighter. As I walked toward my front door, I thought about all the employees who would arrive at work tomorrow, secure in the knowledge that their jobs were safe, their future was bright, and their leader would always fight for what was right. I thought about the clients who trusted us with their business, the partners who had chosen to work with us, the investors who believed in our vision. Most of all, I thought about the lesson that this experience had taught me: that sometimes the greatest challenges become the greatest opportunities, that sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up making us stronger, and that sometimes a simple email can change everything in ways that nobody could have predicted. The termination notice that was supposed to end my career had instead become the foundation for its greatest chapter. And as I stepped inside my home and closed the door behind me, I knew that tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that integrity, courage, and truth will always triumph over deception, cowardice, and betrayal. The company I had built was more than just a business. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of vision, and the remarkable things that can happen when you refuse to give up on your dreams, no matter how impossible the odds might seem. I had been terminated by email, but I had been reborn in a boardroom, and the future belonged to those who were brave enough to fight for it. But the story didn't end there. In the months that followed, something extraordinary began to unfold within the walls of Chen Logistics Solutions. The crisis that had nearly destroyed us had revealed something remarkable: the hidden potential that existed within our own team, potential that had been overlooked and undervalued during the turbulent period of Marcus's leadership. It started with Rebecca Martinez, our night security coordinator who had been quietly observing our operations for over 2 years. Rebecca had a background in supply chain management from her previous life in Mexico, where she had managed distribution networks for a major manufacturing company. When economic circumstances forced her to emigrate to the United States, language barriers and credential recognition issues had relegated her to security work, her expertise hidden behind a uniform and a security badge. During the chaos following Marcus's departure, Rebecca approached me with a hesitant knock on my office door. In her careful, accented English, she presented a detailed analysis of our warehouse operations that she had been working on during her quiet night shifts. Her observations were brilliant, identifying inefficiencies in our inventory management system that were costing us thousands of dollars monthly. I stared at the meticulously hand-drawn diagrams and calculations, realizing that we had been overlooking a world-class operations expert who had been walking our halls every night for 2 years. Rebecca's insights weren't just valuable, they were revolutionary. She had identified patterns in our shipping data that our expensive analytics software had missed, solutions that could streamline our entire distribution network. Within a week, Rebecca had transitioned from security coordinator to senior operations analyst. Her salary tripled, her expertise finally recognized and valued. The transformation was remarkable to witness. The quiet woman who had once patrolled our offices with a flashlight now commanded respect in our strategy meetings, her deep understanding of logistics networks proving invaluable as we scaled to meet the demands of our new BMW contract. But Rebecca's story was just the beginning. Her elevation seemed to unlock something within our company culture. a recognition that talent and brilliance could exist in the most unexpected places. People began to share ideas more freely, to reveal skills and knowledge that had been dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. James Rodriguez, our operations manager, mentioned during a team meeting that he had noticed our newest custodial staff member, Elena Vasquez, spending her break time studying programming tutorials on her phone. A casual conversation revealed that Elena had been a software engineer in El Salvador. Her computer science degree rendered invisible by the journey that had brought her to our cleaning crew. Elena's story was heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. She had been a lead developer for a regional technology company, designing database systems for government agencies. Political instability had forced her to flee her country with her 2 young children, leaving behind not just her career, but her entire identity as a professional. In Seattle, survival had taken precedence over professional ambition. Cleaning offices paid the bills and kept her family fed, but it had slowly been eroding her sense of self-worth. I found Elena one evening after most of the staff had left, sitting at a computer in our break room, working through coding challenges with the focused intensity of someone trying to keep their skills sharp, despite circumstances that seemed determined to bury them. She looked up with startled embarrassment when she noticed me watching, immediately beginning to apologize in rapid Spanish. "Elena," I said gently, "don't apologize. Show me what you're working on." What I saw on that screen changed everything. Elena had been recreating portions of our inventory management system from memory, identifying bugs and inefficiencies that our paid developers had missed. Her code was elegant, efficient, and demonstrated a level of understanding that most of our technical team would have envied. The conversation that followed was transformative for both of us. Elena spoke about her fears, her sense of displacement, her worry that she had lost too much ground to ever return to her profession. I saw in her eyes the same dreams that had driven me to build this company, the same passion for creating something meaningful through technology. By the end of that week, Elena had joined our development team as a senior software engineer. Her first project was optimizing the very inventory system she had been studying during her breaks, and her improvements resulted in a 30% increase in processing efficiency. But more than her technical contributions, Elena brought something else to our team, a reminder that resilience and talent often go hand in hand, that some of our most valuable people might be hiding in plain sight. The transformation of Elena and Rebecca created a ripple effect throughout the company. Other employees began to share their hidden talents, their suppressed ambitions, their dreams that had been set aside but never forgotten. Our facilities manager, David Kim, revealed his background in industrial engineering. Our receptionist, Maria Santos, had been an accountant before raising her children. Our maintenance technician, Ahmed Hassan, had been a mechanical engineer in Syria. Each revelation brought new possibilities, new perspectives, new solutions to challenges we hadn't even realized we were facing. The company that had nearly been destroyed by one man's betrayal was being rebuilt by the collective strength of people who had been overlooked, undervalued, and given the opportunity to show their true potential. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in our company culture itself. The crisis had forced us to confront fundamental questions about leadership, trust, and the kind of organization we wanted to be. We implemented new policies that prioritized internal development, created pathways for career advancement that didn't depend on traditional credentials, and established mentorship programs that paired experienced professionals with those looking to rebuild their careers. We also created what we called the Hidden Potential Initiative, a formal process for identifying and developing untapped talent within our organization. Every employee was given the opportunity to share their background, their skills, their dreams for their professional future. We partnered with local universities to provide continuing education opportunities, offered language support for employees whose first language wasn't English, and created flexible work arrangements that allowed parents to balance career development with family responsibilities. The financial impact was remarkable. Our employee retention rate increased dramatically. Our innovation pipeline expanded exponentially, and our reputation as an employer of choice attracted top talent from across the industry. But more importantly, we had created something that couldn't be quantified in spreadsheets. A community of people who believed in each other's potential, who supported each other's growth, who understood that everyone deserved the opportunity to contribute their best work. 6 months after the boardroom confrontation that had changed everything, I stood in the same conference room where Marcus had tried to end my career. But this time, I wasn't alone. Elena was presenting her latest innovation, a machine learning algorithm that could predict supply chain disruptions with unprecedented accuracy. Rebecca was explaining how her operational improvements had reduced our shipping costs by 20%. James was outlining expansion plans that would create 50 new jobs in the next year. As I looked around the table at these remarkable people, I realized that Marcus's betrayal had been the catalyst for something far more significant than personal vindication. It had forced us to examine not just our corporate structure, but our corporate soul. It had challenged us to become the kind of company that didn't just employ people, but empowered them to become the best versions of themselves. The email that had shocked me awake in a Frankfurt hotel room had set in motion a chain of events that transformed not just my career, but the lives of dozens of people who had been waiting for someone to see their potential, to believe in their dreams, to give them the opportunity to shine. Late that evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I encountered Elena in the hallway. She was carrying a small gift bag, and her face wore the shy smile of someone who wanted to express gratitude, but wasn't sure how to begin. "David," she said in her now confident English, "I wanted to thank you, not just for the job, but for seeing me. For 6 months, I felt invisible. I was cleaning offices, but I was disappearing a little bit each day. You gave me back my identity." She handed me the gift bag, and inside I found a small framed photograph of her 2 children holding certificates from their school's honor roll. "They're proud of their mother again," she said simply. "That's worth more than any salary." As Elena walked away, I felt a profound sense of completion. The company that had almost been destroyed by one man's selfishness had been rebuilt by the collective strength of people who had been given the chance to reveal their true selves. We had learned that the most valuable assets in any organization aren't the ones listed on the balance sheet, but the untapped potential that exists within every person who walks through the doors each day. The termination notice that was supposed to end my career had instead become the foundation for its greatest chapter. But more than that, it had become the beginning of something much larger. A story about the power of recognition, the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances, and the remarkable things that can happen when we create spaces where hidden brilliance can finally emerge. Months later, when business publications wrote about the Chen Logistics miracle, they focused on our financial turnaround, our innovative technologies, our rapid growth. But they missed the real story. The real miracle wasn't in our profit margins or our market share. It was in the transformation of Elena from custodian to senior engineer, of Rebecca from security guard to operations expert, of a company that had learned to see potential where others saw only limitations. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed us had ultimately saved us, not just from corporate collapse, but from the much more subtle tragedy of wasted human potential. We had learned that everyone deserves to be seen, Everyone deserves to be valued, and everyone deserves the opportunity to contribute their unique gifts to something larger than themselves. As I locked the office door behind me and walked into the Seattle night, I carried with me the knowledge that we had built something extraordinary. Not just a successful business, but a community where people could be their authentic selves, where talent was recognized regardless of its packaging, where dreams deferred were not dreams denied. The future stretched out before us, full of possibilities we were only beginning to imagine. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal, that the greatest leaders are not those who demand recognition for themselves, but those who have the vision to recognize greatness in others, the courage to bet on hidden potential, and the wisdom to know that true success is measured not in what we achieve alone, but in what we inspire others to become. The email that had started it all remained in my phone, a reminder of how quickly everything can change, how the moments that seem designed to break us can instead become the foundation for something beautiful. Marcus had tried to terminate my employment, but instead he had initiated a transformation that would resonate through countless lives for years to come. And as I drove home through the quiet streets of Seattle, I smiled at the thought that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals lead to the most profound discoveries. And sometimes the people who try to diminish us end up illuminating possibilities we never knew existed. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.